about ready to do that thing. We don't want no, I'm sorry, the moment presented itself. Sorry. Sorry.
All right, looks like we are having a little bit of technical difficulties with these microphones, so we'll just have to use our grown-up voices. So my name is Ayana Baheen. I'm the Director of Training and Conflict Consulting at New York Peace Institute. New York Peace Institute. There you go. Okay. Ayana Baheen, Director of Training and Conflict Consulting at New York Peace Institute. New York Peace Institute is the Community Dispute Resolution Center for Manhattan and Brooklyn, which means that we provide free mediation, conflict resolution, restorative practices to New Yorkers in conflict. A little bit about me. I actually grew up in this neighborhood, although I've been living in Brooklyn for the past 25, 30 years. But I have incredibly fond memories of elementary school here, donuts, pizza, of course food, and neighbors, the neighborhood here, right? I care very much about this community, and I am here in the capacity of a multi-partial facilitator. I'm not gonna say neutral because I'm human, and as I said, I care about this neighborhood and I care about New York, but I don't believe that anybody here is right or wrong. I believe that you all are committed to this community, and that whatever positions you hold come out of that commitment to community. And my hope is that tonight you will have an opportunity to hear from people who have been involved in this Open Streets process for the past several months, including Cynthia, who is the Block Association president, Emily, who is a DOT representative, Herb, who is here as a neighbor, Peter, who is here as a neighbor, and Maxine, who is also here as a neighbor, with different views about whether or not there should be open streets and how those, if we do have an open street at West 103rd Street, how that will go. The purpose again of tonight is to hear each other. We ask people to submit questions in advance that we share with many of the panelists. Unfortunately, DOT is seeing them for the first time tonight, but they're not new questions and they should be able to answer them. If within the next 2 hours we can't get through their different points of view and answers to the questions, we also have index cards so that you can submit questions if they haven't been answered, so that DOT can answer them in the future. The next step after tonight would be to get a smaller representative group together to listen to what people have said, proposals that have been made, and have a conversation around getting a chance to see if there are any adjustments that can be made to the planned process. Okay, so that's where we are, that's what we're doing tonight, and so I'm gonna ask first you, Cynthia, to speak.
Hi everyone. I'm getting over a cold, so I have a little bit of laryngitis. And I'm, as Ayana said, I'm the chair of the Block Association, but tonight I'm really speaking on behalf of myself, trying to remember the various things that have happened, because I've been the chair for many years. So this is kind of a brief explanation of how we got here. In 2020, the DOT created the Open Streets program to create more social opportunities during the COVID pandemic. An application was submitted to make West 103rd Street an open street. The Block Association was not involved in this application at all. In fact, we were not even consulted. The board spent much of the remainder of 2020 trying to understand how the application was accepted and exactly what it involved. Was the street open to resident cars, taxis, deliveries, accessorides, and who was responsible for the steel structures at the intersections? Eventually, we learned that Peter Freishoff had created a group to oversee the open street. In October 2020, Open Streets and Open Plans hosted an event unveiling their idea for reimagining all of West 103rd Street. During that event, they surveyed about 91 passersby, and 70% said they were in favor of making the plan permanent. In our December 2020 board meeting, we held a lengthy discussion about the open streets. There were lots of questions and opinions. It was an emotional discussion, but at that time it was very respectful. In our 2020 winter newsletter, we included an article about the proposal for the open street. In May 2021, Peter Freishoff gave a detailed presentation of the updated plan for West 103rd Street, which would limit traffic and increase safer pedestrian use of the street. Board members had lots of questions, and Peter agreed to do another presentation in June of 2021. At our July 13th, 2021 board meeting, we continued the discussion about the open street plan. We finally voted to create a new, more thorough survey to circulate to the residents of the Block Association. Nancy GoPro agreed to draft that survey. In September and October, the survey was circulated in our full newsletter. Residents could return their answers in an attached envelope or by online with SurveyMonkey. We received about 200 responses from the 2,100 newsletters that we distributed. The results were mixed, with 30% approving the plan. In the comments section, 20% were pro and 40% were con. In 2022, Peter Freishoff presented the updated plan that DOT had created. After much discussion, the board voted support. The fact that the street would not be closed to traffic, the bulb outs at the crosswalks would make it safer for pedestrian crossing, and that there would be occasional events organized to promote community engagement were the persuasive points. Board members also liked the idea that the installations would be temporary and the plan could be revisited if it was not successful. The DOT then presented its plan to CP7, where it was approved. Over the course of the next year, the controversy of the plan continued. Some residents were not aware of how many parking spaces were being eliminated. They started a petition and mounted protests. Several of our board members resigned due to the tense discussions, with several saying the conversations had become too disrespectful. The tension became so vocal and divisive that Councilmember Gail Brewer contacted the Peace Institute to mediate between the opposing groups. And that brings us to Turner.
Nancy, thank you very much for that, Cynthia, that brief history, outline of history of how we got to today. I'm going to ask Emily, if possible, to kind of share more about what the actual proposal is, and I'm going to pass the microphone behind her.
Great, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Emily Weidenhoff, and I'm the Director of Public Space at New York City Department of Transportation. I'm also joined by my colleague, Dee Nelson, who has been working very detailed on both the design and the implementation of this and many of our other projects. Thank you so much for having us here tonight and for coming out to share your thoughts and input on our project. Some high-level background, again, as was said, the Open Streets program really grew out of the pandemic. It was based on a long-standing program that DOT had run for a long time called Weekend Walks, where we looked at temporary closures of streets to really activate and bring a lot of the civic and commercial life that was happening indoors, outdoors, really engaging with communities. We've learned a lot over the course of the pandemic, everything from the sheer scale of the Open Streets program, working in so many different neighborhoods. Also something that was very new and really helped us evolve in our ways of thinking about the street was the idea of moving beyond the binary of either the street is open or closed, and really thinking about how we can manage the street in more of a gradient of ways, and kind of designing the street for who's using it when. And that's something we'll talk a little bit about specifically to 103rd Street and the design we're thinking about there. I will also say that during the pandemic, we used the tools that we had on hand, and for most of our open streets, it was the metal barricade, which was an absolutely imperfect tool and a huge part of our motto in thinking about continuing to evolve the program is really thinking beyond the barricade. And again, how do we start to deliver designs for our streets that can meet all the different needs of neighborhoods and community residents as we move out of the pandemic. And so Open Streets continues to be kind of our lightest touch program at DOT, the kind of one end of the spectrum with a whole lot of other tools to design streets that are safer, that are better for communities, that facilitate slow speeds for vehicles, shorter crossings, which is an incredibly important tool for us when we think about communities with high populations of seniors, as well as carve out more space for pedestrians and cyclists to socialize and gather. Our Open Streets program is an annual application-based program, and so this year we're nearing 200 open streets citywide. But a lot of what we've done over the past 2 years has really worked with partner organizations where they're seeing some critical success to Open Street, where we're seeing a lot of really great activations, a lot of demand from the community members, but also places where we need to get better and we need to refine the design and get at something that can start to, again, shape and design the street that works better for everyone. And that's where we are with 103rd Street. I think we realized very quickly that it's important for, 103rd Street is very important for vehicular circulation, but it's also has a street with very narrow sidewalks and a lot of high demand to and from the park. So we really wanted to think about a way that how can we make sure that this local residential street can really foster slow speeds and help support the cyclists and pedestrians that are using it as a connection to the park, while not also causing a lot of operational impact. We know there are some needs with Access-a-Ride on the block. At DOT, everything we do considers emergency access, fire truck, ambulance, services like that. So based on, again, some of these like larger conversations and design criteria that we're having with city agencies, along with all of the really great feedback that our team got from many of you, as well as the larger community on the street as part of outreach events, surveys, things like that, we developed the plan that we took to CB7 that was really about, again, moving beyond the barricade, getting those metal barricades off the street, and how could we, in our light touch interim materials, paint, gravel, develop a slow speed street that also starts to really enhance the residential character of the neighborhood, provide greening, shortened crosswalks, things like that. So we have the full community board presentation that we gave to CB7 back in June of last year. That's on our website. We didn't have technical capabilities today. My colleague Dee does have plans of the 3 blocks. So I'm gonna walk through that super quickly, but if anyone would like a physical copy of the plan, you could raise your hand and Dee can hand it out so you can be looking at it as we talk through it. But our main approach is to, again, really think about balance and starting to really shape the street for that local vehicular circulation and access, where we can prioritize pedestrians and cyclists, enhance safety, calm traffic. And so we're achieving that in a few different ways. I'm gonna start on the easternmost block, which is the Amsterdam to Broadway block. And this is where we're creating a shared street, which is encouraging vehicles to drive 5 miles an hour. And we do that by creating kind of gateway entrance and adding neck downs where we're narrowing the intersection, which helps shorten the crossing for pedestrians. It also helps slow turns for vehicles, and the change in the roadway surface really helps identify to vehicles that they're entering a different kind of space. So it's a tool we use to really try to shape the roadway as much as possible to encourage slow speeds for vehicles. We're also using a tool that we developed that is really about kind of maximizing green and traffic calming while minimizing impact to parking, and that's something we call the hug. And so you'll see the little half circles on the block, which are about 20 feet wide, which is about the typical length of a parking space. And these hugs provide space for planters, for greening, to really make and enhance the residential block to help prioritize the corridor for pedestrians and cyclists. But it also acts as a traffic calming element where there's a visual element, kind of, again, a hug to help calm vehicles navigating through the space. It also allows us to place them in a way where, again, we can preserve a lot of the parking on the block, kind of equal across the corridor. And then also on Amsterdam Avenue, it was important for us to create, again, additional pedestrian space, working with the hostel also. There's some additional space there. We also heard from the community a strong desire to not add things like granite blocks, tables and chairs, really just keep the toolkit for the open street focused on greening, traffic calming, general safety. And then the next two blocks are a similar, even lighter touch treatment, which are really, again, focused on the neck downs at the intersection. So this, for us, is a critical tool to help shorten pedestrian crosswalks so that you just ultimately have more time when you're crossing the street from when you're in the crosswalk to when you're in a pedestrian-only space. It also helps calm turning vehicles. It makes the intersection a little bit tighter, and we see that vehicles move more slowly when they're in that tighter condition. And then again, you'll see the repetition of the hugs, which we thought through in great detail in terms of where they're located on the block, both in terms of traffic circulation, but trying to maximize and limit parking loss, placing them kind of in a good configuration with some of the curb cuts and things like that. And so that is really the fundamental pieces of our plan. Again, it's something that we designed really closely with the fire department, so you can even see in our deck we show the swept path analysis that we do for the trucks that shows that all of the truck access can be maintained. And overall, this is something that, like with all of our open streets and all of our local partnerships, we're going to install it, we're going to watch it, we're going to continue to be out on the street collecting feedback, see what's working, what's not, and kind of continue an ongoing engagement with the community about how we can continue to shape these three blocks of 103rd Street to meet kind of the larger set of both issues and opportunities that we're hearing from the community. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So, just paraphrasing, I heard you talk a lot about, wanting to prioritize different goals for different open street projects, and that for this project in particular, it's about prioritizing pedestrians and cyclists and beautifying the space and enhancing safety and traffic calming. And I heard you also talk about the pandemic and how this open streets project, while it existed in some form before, really grew out of a desire in the pandemic to provide public spaces for community to get together as people have been isolating more and more in their homes and away from each other. So that is what I heard you say, and as you said, people have access to this plan on the website. Okay, next, I guess we'll go in the order that you're sitting in. That might make it
You
easier.
had Maxine on the agenda, actually, was the
Did
order.
I? I thought I had Peter and then Maxine and then her.
I'm
But
happy.
Maxine, I'm gonna try.
I would like, I would like two people to speak before me in response to the process that Cynthia said happened with the Block Association. And then I would like her to speak to the design that DOT just presented. That would keep the order correct, and then I will speak, or Peter should really speak. But right now, I think
You would like to cede your space, or you want to have?
No, I'm not
conversation?
ceding my space, I'm just saying in terms of sequence, and in terms of information that has just been given. One, Cynthia just gave what happened with the Block Association. That would be Nancy to give the information to people here, what that process was.
Okay.
She was on the board at the time. DOT has just given a lengthy, excuse me,
I just want to make sure you have a microphone so people can hear you.
can you all hear me or not?
Yeah.
No, okay, thank you. Thank you, yeah. Sometimes you hear yourself better than other people. Yes. You've been given two pieces of information here. One from the Block Association, and we'd like to respond to that. The second piece of information you've just been given is the plan from DOT. And I would like her to respond to DOT's presentation as to the design of the block, which she just presented, and what that means. And then after that, if, Peter could present and I present, but two pieces of information have just been presented, and I think there needs to be a response. Because the only reason we are here is because we have been silenced.
Thank you. We're gonna stick with this order where people are sitting in, and then I'll invite the people that you asked to speak.
This is about an unplanned meeting. First, I want to compliment my neighbor here for a very professional
What's your name, sir? What's your name, sir?
Okay.
This is her.
I say I want to compliment my neighbor for a very professional presentation on the work that DOT is doing. Whether I agree with it or not, it was completely comprehensible. It was very well understood, very well presented, and understandable, I should say. Okay, my name is Herb Alter. I live at 875 West End. I'm one of the people who's been against this project, okay, and I think it's best if I explain how it came about that I would be against it. Because normally, who knew me would say, it's green, it's good, how could you not like it? During the pandemic, many of us were away, and I might remind you, some of us were aging our newspapers and didn't want to touch a newsletter. Things that, that sort of information was not readily available. My wife and I left, she was sick, we stayed away from the city during the pandemic, and most of this happened during that time. It continued after that, but certainly it started during the height of the pandemic. So when I became aware of this, which was only last year, through the way that I find out about everything in the neighborhood, in the dog run, not through the newsletter that I might chance upon to read. But through talking to neighbors, I discovered that there were aspects of this that people didn't like because they were surprised by them. In particular, losing parking spaces seemed to be a big issue. I think that was what triggered a lot of the opposition. I don't think that is the only reason that people are against it. I think that one of the reasons they're against it, to start enumerating, is because they feel it's being imposed on them. I understood from the presentation how you're trying to test and see if it works, but I think what we're looking at is there are no elected representatives who are part of any part of this. The Block Association, I have volunteered to become part of it, to be on the board, and that makes me part of it. But I don't represent anyone other than the hundreds of people who signed petitions against open streets. You know, but otherwise, I don't represent anyone. The Block Association doesn't represent anyone. CB7 doesn't represent anyone. These are volunteers. They were nominated by Gail and by the borough president, but they're volunteers, and most of them have conflicts of interest. And if we had enough time, I would tell you each person and identify the conflict of interest. And on the community board, they are allowed to vote even when they have a conflict of interest. So when you hear about CB7, which you didn't hear about tonight, how it was an almost unanimous vote. Well, yes, it was. People came in ready to vote. They listened, they went out, they voted the way they were supposed to vote. I think these are the kinds of issues that have irritated the community that we're not really addressing tonight, that I was hoping we would address up front. So when Maxine tried to rearrange the agenda, it was first of all pushed back because we've been trying to negotiate the agenda from day one, and we received silence from both Cynthia and you. Silence, okay? And what she was trying to do is have Nancy address what Cynthia talked about, because she was there and has a very different view of what happened. So much so, and this is actually the reason that I joined the board, everyone on the board who was against us left. And I looked at it and there was no opposition. It was the Block Association is unadulterated, everyone's for it, there's no discussion, no meaningful discussion. There's a lot of defensiveness about, we did a great study. We had 190 people or so. But we just went out in the street and immediately got 600. So I don't know what that means. And I think in the same way, when you talk about, we look at the street, we see the traffic. You count the cars, you count the pedestrians. Well, I hope there are many, many more pedestrians than cars, because that's normal. But if you look at the street, it's actually a beautiful street. And nobody's speeding. And if you actually look at the accident numbers in the NYPD files for the last 10 years, you find very few. Very, very few. And very few involving pedestrians. So when we thought we were going to have time, have Zoom, have a screen, we had a presentation, that's what we came for. Okay, so it's disappointing. So I know you want the mic back, and I will give it to you, but I hope you'll let Nancy speak. Thank you.
I will definitely let Nancy speak. I just want to make sure that everybody here gets an opportunity to speak, and let me just say what I heard you say. You said that you're really upset with this process and with the entire process because you don't feel like you've been heard, or that other voices that are against this have been heard, that it may seem like the issue is just about parking, but for you, it's really that you feel like you haven't had a voice in the process, and and you feel like your fellow community members haven't either, you don't trust or respect the CB7 process, because you feel like everybody there had a conflict of interest, and you also don't appreciate the board, although now you're a part of it, because you feel like the block association board, that anybody who was opposed to open streets left. And so there aren't enough voices there in opposition. So you're really upset about the process, and that's the thing that it sounds like what you're saying is the worst thing about this. You have a beautiful
It's a large part of
street.
what I'm saying.
You have a beautiful street. There aren't a lot of accidents on it, such that it doesn't seem to you that your West 103rd Street needs this extra attention.
And I think the funding for this was meant for underserved neighborhoods.
And you also think that the
Excuse me, are you two having a conversation with each other? I mean, can we just kind of move this along?
We can, but I really want to make sure that everybody on the
Yeah,
panel.
everybody's hot.
I hear All right, next person up is Peter. If you can introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Peter Brischow. I've lived on the Upper West Side for 72 of my 74 years, and on West 103rd Street since 1982 with my wife Casey, who's in the audience. And thanks very much for everybody who arranged this. Hesed, we're in Temple Hesed, and that means love and kindness in Hebrew. So we're all hoping that we can leave here feeling a little bit better about ourselves than when we walked in. And I also want to thank Council Member Brewer, who is here and whose heart really wants us to get along a lot better and quell the anger in our neighborhood. I think it's important to understand how grateful we are for her efforts and that of 3 administrations, the Bloomberg administration, the de Blasio administration, and now with Mayor Adams, working with CB7, working with DOT. We are much safer in terms of traffic crashes than we were 25 years ago. Riverside Drive is much safer, West End Avenue is much safer, the Broadway intersection at 96th and 97th Street is much safer, Amsterdam, Columbus, and Central Park West is much safer. There were lots and lots of discussions about all of these streets at CB7, there are lots of people, anyone who's been involved in this process will tell you that issues like parking and how do we design our streets, they're not easy. This is really, really hard work. But we also have to recognize that traffic crashes are the single largest cause of injury and death for people under the age of 15 and also for seniors. Every single day, citywide, there are about 130 people citywide who are injured in traffic crashes. More than 300 a year are killed, actually more than die from gunshot wounds. On West 103rd Street, NYPD data shows that in the last 10 years, there have been 38 crashes on the 3 blocks that DOT is proposing to redesign. That's the Amsterdam block, the Broadway block, and Riverside Drive. 31 of those 37 crashes occurred at intersections. And that's important too, because most traffic crashes happen at intersections. It's because vehicles are speeding, it's because vehicles are turning, so walkers and drivers don't see each other, and the crosswalks are too wide. So the DOT is redesigning every single one of the crossings as high visibility intersections so that drivers and walkers can see each other. If you do that, and you do that by making sure that the cars turn tighter so that they can't cut the curb, how do we do that? And how do we do that well? Well, the crude way, the temporary way, those are these ugly metal barriers. They prevent added speeds and traffic crashes. The nicer way is what DOT has proposed to the community board and is about to proceed with, to redesign it as high visibility intersections and also redesign the street with planters, with beautiful planters. So at the outset, it was said that